And because we haven't filled up the room yet, I'm going to give you a quick task. This is our morning energizer. I want you to quickly find somebody in the room that you have not spoken to yet in this entire symposium. Quickly, go find someone, and I will give you the instruction. Find a new friend. All right? All right? Introduce yourself. Step away from your bestie. Find a new person. There's someone here who looks lost. You can move. You have legs. Find a new person. All right. Can I give you the task? Shh. Okay, attention. With your new person, I would like you to ask them a question. Are we listening? Let's raise our hands so I know you're listening. Keep it in the air. Until we have silence, keep your hand in the air. The question is, and you need to find out on both sides, if you woke up tomorrow as an ocean animal, what animal would you be and why? Why is the most important part. Share your animal and find out your new friend's animal. Off you go. Be specific. Fish is not cutting it. What kind of fish? A billfish? A sardine? What kind of ocean animal would you be and why? I can't wait for feedback. This looks fun. All right, come on back to your chair. Leave your new bestie alone. Come back and sit down. Just a quick shout of yes and thumbs up. Did anyone find a new friend from a new country? Has anyone found their ocean animal twin this morning? What do we have in the room? Sir, what ocean animal did you find out? Are you and also your partner? Dolphin is your partner, and you're also a dolphin. There we go. They met at the 13th WIOMSA Scientific Symposium. All right. Let's hear from a lady. What did you find out?
He's a shark. I'm a dugong.
Did we go into specifics? What type of shark? We're talking to scientists here.
Not really.
No. All sharks. All sharks. Thank you. All right. Dr. Chuda, we've always wondered what animal, ocean animal you might be.
A mud skipper.
A skipper. And your partner? You can allocate her an ocean animal. A dugong. Wow. All right. I've never seen a dugong, but they're cute, so. All right. Great. Are we energized? We're good. All right. Something that I'd like you to give yourselves a round of applause for, roll slides, AV team, is we have the highest download rate of the WIOMSA app. We are now at over 700 downloads. A round of applause for yourselves for listening. So if you have not downloaded the app, can we grab our phones, please? Because we're about to do our social media challenge. Can you get your phone? Who hasn't downloaded the app? Who proudly is like, you know what? I didn't listen to you, Miranda, but I'll do it now. We still have Wi-Fi, WIOMSA 2025, password WIOMSA 2025. Let's download the app, let's blow this away. I want 1,000 downloads by the end of tomorrow. There's a team behind this who have worked tirelessly to make sure all the content is there. And what I can share is the app is starting to talk to you. It's a bit like a person. So enjoy the interactions with the notifications you'll start receiving on the app as of today. Right, social media challenge. I want to give you a piece of homework. Is that okay? We're not going to do this now, but between now and the end of the day, your task is to take an ocean-inspired photo. You can decide who is in that photo or where it will be, but you're going to take it and you're going to post it with hashtag WIOMSA 2025. Our deadline is 5 p.m. So in the coffee break or the lunch break, you need to go and make sure you fulfill that assignment. Our comms team is tracking to see who is doing this and who isn't. You might not be invited to the next symposium if you don't follow these instructions. So the hashtag official WIOMSA 2025. Thank you very much to everyone that's been posting. We have some great engagement and a lot of FOMO. People are commenting, engaging with your content. So thank you very much for that. Right, let's have a look at the day at a glance. We're in plenary now. The room is starting to fill up. And we will be going to morning coffee at 10:30, but today's plenary is very exciting. We've got not one, not two, but 3 book launches. We've got 2 keynote speakers and a partridge in a pear tree. So we've got lots to get through, so I'll ask for your attention, focus, lots of exciting content coming up. Looking forward to launching those books. After morning coffee, we go into oral presentations. Now, I have some really key announcements around these in just a moment. Lunch, usual venues, we know the drill. We know where our lunch is, we know how to get there, so I don't need to repeat. Poster sessions. I'm going to share a poster challenge at the end of the plenary this morning, but many of us have not taken the time to go into the exhibit area. It's critical that we go and visit the poster area. There is going to be a People's Choice Award for the favorite poster, voted by you. More details coming soon. WIOMSA General Assembly is taking place at 4 o'clock today. This is for members only, but if you are not a member, you are welcome to observe from the back of the room to allow the members to go through their General Assembly. If you wish to sign up and become a member between now and the General Assembly, you can go to the registration desk to get more information on how you can become a WIOMSA member. I have been sold that I should join WIOMSA. I'm considering it. All right. And this evening, side events. These are invite only. So if you don't have an invitation for this evening, you're having another fun night out in Mombasa. If you've been invited, you know where to be. Let's go through our quick, important reminders. I'm going to be a little bit serious on this one. We've had some challenges around the oral presentations. We can raise our hand and say we've had some challenges. I want us to really take responsibility. For those of us that are presenting, there is a lot of content that is not being submitted on time. It's causing a lot of heartache to session chairs, to AV teams, and to members who have come to hear your content and to learn from you. Please, let's make sure, session chairs, you're in the room before and you have all content loaded. We are live streaming those sessions. So presenters, you will be on the live stream. We have a hybrid setup, so there are members who are in other countries who will be watching and learning from the mini symposia and the oral presentations. So please do not ask to be removed from the screen. The live streaming is a must. We will ask as well that when you go into a room, you commit to the session that you've entered. No leaving halfway. No half an hour here and half an hour there. Is anyone guilty of that? No one's guilty of that, of course. So please, from today, you pick your session, you stay in it till the end. If the room is full, the ushers will not let you in. So we have asked ushers to stand at the door of each breakout session and to refuse entry if all the chairs are full. Please do not be going in and out. Finally, it worked really well when our session chairs went directly to the room before they had coffee. So please, can we repeat that again? Session chairs for today, give me a wave. Please go directly to the room and then proceed to coffee once you know everything is set and you're good to go. We have a map that has been put up in each breakout room that tells you who is the direct responsible individual for a different kind of issue. If you have a technical issue, who do you speak to and what is their WhatsApp number? If you have a content issue, you don't know where to put your presentation, who do you speak to? So we're working hard behind the scenes to make sure every day we get better and better. So a quick round of applause for all the session chairs, the AV teams, and the WIOMSA Secretariat who are not sleeping, I can tell you. All right. I think those are all my reminders for now. There will be more announcements at the end, but let's move to the exciting part of the morning. We are going to transition now to our book launches. We have authors with us who are going to lead us through this session. But for the first book launch, I would like to introduce the two authors of the first book, which is Beneath the Blue, Mapping Marine Topography of Soft Sediment Habitats in the WIO. And I'm going to read their bio, so just give me a moment. Bernadine, Sean Fennessy and Bernadine Everett have in combination undertaken marine research in the WIO for just over 60 years, 36 for Sean, 27 for Bernadine, while based at a unique non-profit, non-governmental research organization widely recognized for its contribution to applied marine science in South Africa and the Western Indian Ocean region. Their research interests are broad, covering fisheries science and marine biology and ecology. They are members of several IUCN species specialist groups, participate in SWIO Fisheries Commission regional working groups, and have done several surveys on the Norwegian research vessel RV Dr. Fridtjof Nansen. Hope I got that name right. Together, they have published around 100 scientific papers and book chapters, round of applause for that, largely on marine ecology and fisheries of the WIO, and have supervised several postgraduate students. Please put your hands together for Sean and Bernadine.
It's better. Jumbo, everyone. Nice to see a fair crowd after last night's festivities. What you see in front of you here is a beautiful cover of a book, which is the output of about 5 years of work from a MASMA-supported or WIOMSA MASMA-supported project called WIOMSA. We'll tell you a little bit about it shortly. I'd just like to introduce the core team, or some of the core team who are here today. This is Bernadine Everett. She'll talk to you shortly, also from the Oceanographic Research Institute. Mary Kishe, thanks. Mary Kishe is from Tafiri. Also very helpful in this project and digging up data and even capturing very old data. And Fiona Mackay, also from the Oceanographic Research Institute. It's been a big job. I'm just going to flick to the next slide quickly. Oh, it's upside down. So WIOMSA. Certainly there's a lot of work done on coral reefs and mangroves and seagrasses in this area, and you'll hear about more of those later, but they certainly are critical habitats. But there's a huge habitat which is pretty much undescribed, and that was the purpose of this project, was to look at the soft sediment habitats of the WIO. It involved 5 countries, mainland Africa and the west coast of Madagascar, and we looked at existing data. Bernadine will describe that in more detail. But you can see the partner institutions that were involved in this, and the list of participants is massive. It's just too many to go through here, but it was really a collaborative input in making use of existing data. And I'd really like to just acknowledge MASMA, the MASMA program, and WIOMSA in particular, for this opportunity to present it to you, and you'll hear more about it from Bernadine.
Okay, so most of the outputs from the WIOMSA project have been provided in a special edition of the Western Indian Ocean Journal of Marine Science, which was launched last week. But the atlas, we felt, needed to be something more palatable and more available to a wider audience. So most of the content for the atlas or for the project was spatial. So the atlas is a perfect vehicle for this. And what's in the atlas is all the input data in terms of the maps that we used for our analyses, and all the output data. So what you're seeing now are some of the outputs that are described in the atlas. So each page has a full spread of the region. It gives a description of how these metrics were determined, and also sometimes you get a little inset map which shows a little bit of more finer detail. So we have things in the atlas, such as the biodiversity. So we used average taxonomic distinctness for this. We also determined sensitivity of the benthic communities in the area using a number of different methods. So looking at things like how sessile are the animals, how widely distributed they are. But yeah, so basically we want to see the areas where our animals that live in the soft sediments are more vulnerable to any disturbances. So we also included things like distribution of elasmobranchs, because as we know, these are vulnerable species. They're slow growing, they reproduce only a few young. So we've given distributions of where the sharks were caught and where the batoids were caught. And then we also have a section on what threatens our soft sediments. So obviously the main one is bottom trawling, but we also have things like invasive species, the installation of fiber cables, etc. So there's a section on this. So this atlas is freely available. You can scan the QR code. I have to warn you, it's a big file. We did not want to reduce the resolution because then you lose detail on the maps. But if you want to hear more about WIOMSA and how it can contribute to our 30 by 30 MPA goals, please join us in this venue tomorrow at 2 o'clock, where we will be discussing all the outputs from this project and looking at a way forward. Thank you very much.
All right, to launch the book, I'm going to ask everyone to stand up. Stay right there. Can we stand up? We're going to give them a Tanzanian congratulations, all right? That's what happens when you have a Tanzanian MC. We're going to rub our hands together. This is called Pasha. Pasha, Pasha, Pasha. Pasha, Pasha, Pasha. Choma, we will clap in their direction, okay? That was the practice round, because that has zero energy, all right? So we're going to Pasha. When we Choma, is in the direction of the authors. To congratulate them for their good work, we are going to Choma 4 times. There are 4 authors. Pasha, Pasha, Pasha. Pasha, Pasha, Pasha. Look at them, not me. Pasha, Pasha, Pasha. Choma, 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 Choma. Congratulations. The book is officially launched. Thank you. All right. Our next book, I told you it was going to be a lively morning. Our very own Dr. Kimwaga, senior lecturer at the University of Dar es Salaam, has written a book called Constructed Wetlands. Let me tell you a little bit about him before he comes up on the stage. Dr. Kimwaga is a senior lecturer at the University of Dar es Salaam and a distinguished figure in water, sanitation, and wasteland and hygiene. As an academic, researcher, and practitioner, he holds a PhD in environmental engineering, master's degree in environmental studies and water resources engineering, and a bachelor's in civil engineering. Dr. Kimwaga is certified by the National Environmental Council, NEMC, for environmental impact assessment. He's engaged with international and national professional institutions, networks, and associations, such as the Nile IWRM Net, GWP Tanzania, and WaterNet. He contributes actively to his field. I'm going to let you share the rest of yourself because you have a long bio. He's a very distinguished author. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Kimwaga.
Thank you very much, moderator. Habari za asubuhi.
Nzuri.
Yes, as it has been introduced, my name is Dr. Kimwaga and I'm an engineer. But all of a sudden, I've just found myself in the middle of marine scientists. And I think that is what it is. I'm here to give a little bit of a citation about the book that I've just written. Before I do that, first of all, I would like us that we observe a moment of silence in remembering Professor Damas Alfred Mashauri. Professor Damas Alfred Mashauri passed away 2 weeks ago, and he was one of the book editors. So just a moment of silence in remembering of Professor Damas Mashauri. May his soul rest in peace. Amen. Well, first of all, I would like to acknowledge the authors for the book. For this book, we've got about 9 authors who actually contributed to the book. One thing which I would like to mention here is that out of these 9 authors, we had 5 female and 4 male. So as you can see, this assignment was kind of gendered. So the book is about constructed wetlands, a nature-based solution for sustainable wastewater treatment in WIO region. I think since the beginning of this symposium, we've been hearing about the nature-based solution. And as such, the book now was meant to make sure that we have this kind of solution to addressing the pollution in WIO region. The book is structured in 10 chapters. Chapter 1 is talking about the general overview of pollution within the WIO region, but number 2, we are looking into the existing wastewater treatment systems within the WIO region. Number 3 is where now the book is trying to give an overview about constructed wetland technology, the science behind it, the processes that are taking place. Number 4, we looked at the enabling environment within the WIO region, that is policy, laws, and institutions, which are supporting the nature-based solution. The other element that is in the book is to look into the issues of planning, because throughout the implementation of constructed wetlands, the experience that we had was that when it comes into implementation of this technology, people, they just jump into just designing and constructing without actually having a proper planning. And therefore, the book has tried to have a chapter particularly for planning. 6 is where now we are giving the design aspect of constructed wetlands, because constructed wetlands, essentially, these are engineered systems which have been designed and constructed to imitate all the processes that are taking place within the natural wetlands. However, in the constructed wetlands, we have much more controlled conditions and environment that are actually optimizing the removal of different processes. So we have a dedicated chapter for design of the system, but also we have another chapter which is on the construction of the constructed wetlands. We decided to present this particular chapter because the experience that we had was that this is fairly new technology in the region, but even in the country, in Tanzania, where we implemented, we had the issues with the construction. People will just do the construction of this technology in as just like civil engineering projects. In this particular chapter, therefore, we are just providing the do's and don'ts in as far as construction of constructed wetlands is concerned. And also we have the chapter which is dealing with the most important aspect of this nature-based solution, which is operation and maintenance. For those who have at least come across the technology, constructed wetlands is normally considered to be very low cost in terms of the investment and operation and maintenance, but all of a sudden people normally then take good care of this constructed wetland, therefore they normally fall into malfunctioning, and that's because of lack of operation and maintenance. And therefore the book has just presented the chapter specifically on how best to take care of this particular technology in terms of operation and maintenance. And the other most important thing is the issue to do with the economics and the financing for this nature-based solution. Because the experience that I had with constructed wetlands, in as much as a very good technology in terms of its applicability, but the cost is something that has to be presented so that one who would just like to adapt this kind of the system are very much aware of all the costs associated with the system in terms of the investment cost and operation and maintenance cost. But equally importantly, the book has presented various financing options when it comes into the construction of this particular system. And then the last chapter, delegates, we have just presented various case studies within the WIO region. And in fact, we have just selected 4 case studies, 2 for mainland countries, that is Tanzania and Kenya. And also we have a case study for 2 island states, Mauritius as well as Madagascar. That's for reasons that we would like to at least make the presentation of the applicability of this technology in this WIO region. I must say one thing, that constructed wetlands as a nature-based solution is very timely a book, in the sense that constructed wetlands in a way is providing, or rather is an attempt to address the challenges that are happening, not only in the WIO region, but globally, the issue to do with the climate change, to do with the pollution, and the issue to do with the biodiversity. Constructed wetlands are, in a way, trying to mitigate climate change in the sense that the use of constructed wetlands, they normally don't use extensive energy, but also is trying to do the treatment of wastewater and therefore is preventing the pollution, but also is bringing the aspect of biodiversity. The last thing which I would like to make is that this book actually has been contributed by various entities. At this point in time, I would like to acknowledge WIOMSA, which has supported the book in terms of the resources, but also WIOMSA has been in a forefront to provide the strategic technical guidance. But again, I would also like to acknowledge the contribution from Nairobi Convention Secretariat. Again, they've been there to kind of providing the technical backstopping as far as books concerned. We have Council for Scientific and Industrial Research from South Africa have also contributed to this, and also we have University of Dar es Salaam, where I'm affiliated to, and that's University of Dodoma, where some authors are coming from there. Now is the time that I will request all who are interested with the nature-based solution that we have now the very first comprehensive resources in as far as nature-based solution for pollution control in WIO. So it's the time for you to take this book and also adapt it in a way of addressing. And one thing which I'd like to mention is that this is the first edition of the book on the understanding that as more knowledge is being generated for the technology, then we are going to improve the book. Having said that, that is all what I have. Thank you very much.
Let's get up on our feet, please. That's not how we clap anymore, remember? So we're gonna pasha, pasha, pasha with all our energy, like we've had coffee this morning, pasha, 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 pasha. We're gonna do a huge choma in this direction. Pasha, 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 choma. Hongera sana, Dr. Kimwaga. All right. Last but certainly not least, we now have the book launch called The WIO Critical Habitat Outlook, and our speaker who is going to launch this book this morning is Jose Paula, professor at the Faculty of Sciences at the University of Lisbon in Portugal. I think you saw him dancing yesterday, and coordinator of the PhD program in marine sciences. Areas of expertise include tropical marine ecology and biodiversity, marine conservation, mangroves, and larval ecology. He's the author and co-author of over 100 scientific publications, round of applause for that, and the author or editor of books such as the Maputo Bay Ecosystem, the Regional State of the Coast Report, WIO, Exercises in Marine Biodiversity and Ecology. He's also editor-in-chief of the Western Indian Ocean Journal of Marine Science, and he was the coordinator for several EU-funded research projects in the Eastern African coast focused on marine and coastal biodiversity and conservation. He's also a previous member of the WIOMSA board. Let's welcome him to the stage, Jose Paula.
Jambo, good morning. This has been a long journey, the critical habitats.
As they get the sound ready. No? AV team, sound? Let me give you mine.
Okay. So, Jambo again, and this has been a long journey. The critical habitats outlook derives from a process launched by the Nairobi Convention and WIOMSA, and together with the MPA Outlook that was launched some time ago, proposed to inform policymaking about coastal and marine conservation in the VO. It also aims to meet the obligations of the contracting parties of the Nairobi Convention to the Global Biodiversity Framework targets, which correspond to the former Sustainable Development Goals and Aichi targets. So the critical habitats outlook derive from a long partnership between WIOMSA and the Nairobi Convention, which started with the launch in 2015 of the Regional State of the Coast report. And the Nairobi Convention oversight the process, namely managing intergovernmental coordination, but also validation of the local national governments. WIOMSA was a pivotal organization in the Critical Habitats Outlook. Through its networks, scientific, academic, and technical across the VO region, contributed to the overall making of this volume. And it also contributed financially through the MASMA program into the book. The general objectives of this volume were to describe the habitats of the VO and the relevance of their. It also reviewed the socioeconomic dependence by coastal human communities. It highlighted gaps regarding scientific knowledge and thus pointed to future directions on research. It reviewed the current levels of protection and identified areas where we can increase protection of these habitats, just having a direct link into the MPA outlook. And it developed, to a certain extent, alternative scenarios for protection. The coordinators of this volume were both the Nairobi Convention through Jared Boziri and Warwinshin, and the WIOMSA through Julius Francis and Arthur Tudor. We had Matt Richmond as copy editor from Samaki Consultants, Mariana Cravo as editorial assistant, dedicated maps by Marco Correa, and the layout by the excellent Desiree Pelser from Earth and Oceans Developments in South Africa. We have 43 authors from 6 VO countries, so South Africa, Mozambique, Tanzania, Kenya, Madagascar, and Mauritius, and from 5 external countries, Australia, UK, Portugal, Switzerland, and USA. Some numbers. It is a volume with 434 pages in 22 chapters and numerous graphical elements, and I will describe very briefly the flow of chapters in this volume. We have an initial global and regional context where we show the biophysical compartmentalization of the Western Indian Ocean. Then we have a chapter on morphology and oceanography, so also describing the ocean current patterns and atmospheric patterns and their potential change in view of climate-derived changes. We have land-sea connectivity, so the way that channelized and diffuse runoff will impact our coastal ocean. We have a description of the drivers of change and methodology used in the book for their assessment. And then we have the core of the book, which is the critical habitats. We started with rocky and sandy coasts, then of course mangrove forests, seagrass beds, salt marshes, mainly important on the southern VO region, coral reefs, estuaries, and the hydrographic basins that are more important in the region. Also the shelf, deep sea, and offshore pelagic habitats. Threatened species, where we describe the current conservation status of invertebrate and vertebrate species. Marine and coastal birds, seamounts and ridges, and their role as hotspots of biodiversity in the region, but also small islands and atolls that play a major role also in centralizing biodiversity in many parts of the Western Indian Ocean. Coastal forests on the interface, on the land interface with the coasts of the Rio region. Marine and coastal connectivity between habitats. We provide a summary of these critical habitats in the Western Indian Ocean region. And the last chapters are more general and more broad, and will show examples of marine biodiversity conservation, considerations for developing MPA network scenarios. So just linking back again into the MPA outlook. And finally, prospects and priorities for the conservation in the Western Indian Ocean. The story map and the book can be accessed through the website of the Nairobi Convention. It's already in place. This is a book that is launched digitally only now. Let's see if in the future it will get printed. And as we are constrained time, Asante, thank you to all.
If we could jump up on our feet, if you could stay there, Jose, we do want to appreciate you. We know the drill. This time, we're going to do a pasha, but the trauma is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right? Let's go. Pasha, 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 trauma. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you. Congratulations. I hope we've all scanned the QR code. Do we need to put that up one more time? Can we bring the QR code back, please? AV team, slides. All right. So as you grab the QR code there, that's the story map, which is not the full book, is it? Let me just go back. Can we go back 2 slides? There are 2 QR codes. Go back. AV team. All right, we'll use this one. I can't go forward or back, but we are directly where we need to be, I believe. So now it's my esteemed pleasure to move us into the keynote section. So I would like to invite to the stage, please, a member of the WIOMSA board, Mr. Antonio Hogwane. Please put your hands together. He is our session chair for today's keynotes. A warm welcome. I've become the AV guy.
Should be. Well, good morning, everyone, and we say also Jambo. Well, it's great for me to be here because I was there in the very first WIOMSA Scientific Symposium in '97. So it has been 13 times 2 years gone now, and I'm here to celebrate the progresses and the victories of the organization all these years. But more importantly is that I'm here to cheer for the youths who are gradually and progressively taking over from us. So I feel all success for them. I wish success for them, and we're here standing to support them. My duty today is to introduce our keynote speakers, and I'll go for that. So it's my pleasure and honor to introduce our first keynote speaker for today. Today, which is the third day of our symposium, Dr. Philil Mbata, a devoted and outstanding marine scientist in the Western Indian Ocean region. Dr. Philil Mbata is a senior lecturer in the Environmental and Geographical Science Department and the Deputy Director of One Ocean Hub at the University of Cape Town, South Africa. With over 15 years of experience in interdisciplinary research, she specialized in coastal and environmental governance within the Western Indian Ocean region. Her work encompasses multi-scalar governance of conservation, fisheries, and contemporary blue economy interactions, as well as the examination of coastal livelihoods, blue justice, and blue tenure in the global south. Dr. Mbata's vision centers on bridging the gap between policy and practice, as well as fostering connection among people, science, and policy in coastal and ocean governance, particularly where indigenous people and coastal communities are impacted by complex governance processes. As a facilitator in various governance debates, she is actively engaged in developing innovative science to policy approaches that promote dialogue among diverse stakeholders, ensuring meaningful participation and equitable decision-making. She has collaborated with intergovernmental organizations, regional bodies, research institutions, grant makers, government, civil society organizations, and coastal communities to co-produce scalable solutions for inclusive ocean governance in Africa and beyond. Dr. Mbata leads several interdisciplinary projects in the Western Indian Ocean region, focusing on blue economy, fisheries, governance, blue tenure, legal pluralism, and climate change. Additionally, she mentors youths and early career professionals in the region and serves in advisory capacity within various structures and initiatives. So, in this morning, Dr. Philil Mbata will share her experiences and insights on the role of co-production in connecting normative science and policy within leveled realities in the WIO region, a 15 years reflection. So, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in extending a warm welcome to Dr. Philil Mbata. Please.
Good morning, everybody, distinguished guests. I would like to extend thanks to Prof for the introduction, but also to WIOMSA for providing me this platform. And as I stand here, I'm not a one-woman show, and I don't feel like I will be speaking on behalf of myself only. Many of you in this room represent a lot of partnerships that I've built over the years, and it's been amazing to connect and reconnect with many of you here. Some of my students are here. I work all the way down with indigenous people, local communities, small-scale fishers, and all the way up to the international level. So basically, everything that I'll be talking about today will represent lessons that I've learned from all those people at different scales and at different levels. And as introduced, I'm based at the University of Cape Town, and I'm Deputy Director of One Ocean Hub. And I'm very passionate about ocean governance. Ocean governance is something that I've been doing for more than 15 years, not because I'm that old. Some of you are probably trying to calculate my age, but just because this is what I started out with when it wasn't a very sexy topic. I remember my first WIOMSA, when we spoke about governance and issues of access, issues of benefit sharing. A lot of people were sort of like squinting their eyes and wondering, what is this and what are you talking about? But just seeing how far WIOMSA has come and how far this gathering has come, it's really encouraging. I mean, I've been listening to conversations throughout this week and also the previous week, and just to see how far we've come in terms of how we're shaping the discourse around ocean governance. The theme of this conference is One Ocean, One Future, Science, Policies, and Communities in the WIO. And when I looked at the one science, one ocean and one future, I actually thought about, I would add to that one ocean, one future, but very many diverse pasts and histories, which are also similar in certain way, and also a lot of diverse contexts within the WIO and even within individual countries. And I always say, many of you who have heard me speak will know that I always say, there's no way that you can talk about ocean governance by just looking at what is there now and not going back into history and seeing how historical forms of governance have shaped what governance looks like today. And I'm very interested in basically interrogating what governs governance. Who are the people? What are the worldviews? What are the epistemologies that determine how we should all understand governance, sustainability? So these are some of the things that I'll talk about today. So I'm just going to share the next slide. So, oh, sorry, there's the title of my talk. Sorry, I think I'm using this wrong. Sorry. Excuse me for this. No. Backwards. Apologies for this. Okay, yeah, just go to the beginning. Okay, before I go through the slides, I just wanted to give a little bit of background about who I am, and not because I like to talk about myself, but I do believe that providing some context will be very helpful. So I was born in the Western Indian Ocean, and I'm very passionate about understanding, like I said, what governs governance. And I've spent more than a decade interacting with communities, interacting with decision makers and government people. And I started my very first journey actually started by looking at integrated coastal management processes and practices. And many people, when I talk about governance, also ask me, so what solutions can you provide? And I need to make this disclaimer that I'm not here to talk about solutions. I'm here just to share about the processes that I've been a part of, because ocean governance, coastal governance, whatever form of governance you're looking at, I don't think that there are any quick fixes or any solutions, but it's all about how we craft the processes that shape governance. And this is something that I started off with by looking at integrated coastal management. I've interrogated issues around access and benefit sharing. And when I was a student, I remember people that came before me actually saying at that time that some of the issues that I was starting to interrogate were issues that they've been interrogating 20 years before me. And then I started engaging on this journey, and even now in 2025, I'm seeing that a lot of the things that people were talking about and complaining about 30 years ago are still the same issues that we grapple with. And then I started thinking to myself, why do we not see a lot of change on the ground? Even though we see, I mean, we've been hearing in this conference a lot of interesting things that are doing. Yesterday, that are happening, we heard about the PPNJ agreements. There are many policy processes that are happening that are trying to drive change. But yet, for many of you who do engage with people on the ground, many people will tell you that these are not our lived realities. All these rights and all these progressive policies are not translating to our lived realities. So I became very interested in understanding where is the gap. So in my title, you will see there's normative science and policy, because a lot of what comes out of science processes and policy processes on paper looks great. I mean, we have really cutting edge global policy processes really promoting human rights, promoting biodiversity protection, climate action, everything that's in the SDGs. We have the SDGs themselves, which are very normative. Because when you think about, okay, so how do these translate to the lived realities of many people in the ground, especially marginalized coastal communities that we see all over the WIO that are far removed from these processes. So what we see on paper is not translating to what we're seeing on the ground. There are these huge mismatches. And a lot of my work, I've been very privileged to sit in the spaces that are in between, where I see what's happening at the global level, at national level, but then I also see what's happening on the ground and these wide mismatches that are happening. So this is why I'm very interested in looking at how science and policy can move from the normative to basically matching the realities of people on the ground, which I think is quite important. And a lot of this work, I've also been very interested in it because through the work that I've been doing over the past 10 years, I've interrogated UNESCO World Heritage Sites. And South Africa had its first in 1999 /2000. And if you look at how UNESCO defines heritage, for instance, and culture, I try to understand, because for instance, for natural World Heritage Sites, UNESCO says these sites are protected for their outstanding universal value. So then I ask myself, who decides what value is? What kind of knowledge are we using to define value? Whose worldviews? So when I started taking a step back and looking at the meta level of governance, the worldviews, the discourses, the epistemologies of the people in power that make decisions and that shape how we must all see governance, I started realizing that this is what we've been missing, because we always complain that things are not changing on the ground. And we're also always trying to find solutions in the ground without taking a step back and interrogating these meta-level processes that shape in the first place how we ought to see governance. And I remember seeing this as a student because I have an undergraduate degree in environmental management. And I remember someone saying, oh, you're studying environmental management, that's very strange, because you can't really manage the environment. What you're basically doing is you're managing how people interact with the environment. And that really made me take a step back and really made me think about, oh, actually, you know, we really are looking at these interactions between human and nature, which, I mean, have been very, even the way that we see the relationship between humans and nature, it is controlled by discourses and worldviews of certain people. And I will give you an example. In a lot of local communities where I work, people don't see themselves as separate from nature. They see themselves as one with the environment, which is why certain concepts don't really make sense to them that we use in this room, for example. But there are certain worldviews that are Western that create these dichotomies between humans and nature. But this is not how a lot of indigenous people are seeing their relationship with nature. So it's very important that we are mindful about what influences the worldviews that we have about people's interactions with the oceans. What knowledges are we drawing on? Because there's no one way of knowing about the ocean. So I just wanted to provide that context before I carry on with my presentation. And then if I'm looking at the WIO region, I've also had the privilege of visiting a lot of places in the WIO, working with communities, working with different groups, academia, scientists, decision makers. And even though we have this vision of one ocean and one future, and we have diverse contexts as well, like I said in the beginning, one of the common threads that we have, one of the golden threads rather, that basically binds us is our history. You know, we do live in contexts that where colonial eras largely influenced what governance looks like. And right now, we're sitting in a context of coloniality. And for those of you who don't know, coloniality is basically how traits of colonialism still perpetuate themselves in how we govern the ocean, in blue economy activities, in conservation activities. So this for instance, one of the biggest critiques of these activities is that there's still a very big neoliberal focus. If we really were living in a transformed ocean governance state, we wouldn't be seeing the exclusion of communities continuing to happen. So we need to ask ourselves, why is that happening? So these are, in a nutshell, some of the issues that I'm interested in that I'll speak about. So as you can see on that slide, why ocean and coastal governance? Because the ocean is now seen as, actually there's a slide before that, if I'm gonna do this correctly, but it's fine. The ocean is now seen as this new frontier. The Western Indian Ocean is rich in human nature interactions, and we do live in a context where there is a climate and a planetary crisis, where we need to connect climate change with biodiversity debates. Issues of livelihoods and heritage, like I said, when we're thinking about livelihoods in the African context, in the global south, in the Western Indian Ocean, what are we using in our livelihoods analysis? Are we drawing on local context to understand those issues? And currently, we're dealing with competition for ocean space and resources. I mean, the blue economy was formalized in 2012 at the Rio Summit, and since then, a lot of governments are rampantly rolling it out. And it's still not clear what that means for the tenure of many indigenous people, local communities, small-scale fishers. I have engaged in a lot of these processes, and the blue economy is seen as synonymous to sustainable development, really about striking the triple benefits of economy, society, and environment. But then again, we're seeing a lot of trade-offs. And I'm not saying this to sort of like paint a doom and gloom picture. There is a lot of good that can come out of these processes, but again, there are wide mismatches that are just left to just manifest on their own without being engaged with, which is why it's important that we do that. So the blue economy manifests from the term green economy, for some of you who know, and we are looking to the ocean now as this new frontier for development. But in doing so, there are large inequities and inequalities when we're looking at how sectoral activities roll out. We still see a lot of tensions between fortress conservation and tenure rights of communities. And one of the biggest issues that we have in the African context is the issue of plural institutional arrangements and policies, and also the issue of legal pluralism, where we have state systems that govern our environments, our oceans, but in many local contexts, we also have customary systems that predate colonial times that are still not yet brought to the fore enough in decision-making processes. So in terms of aligning normative discourses with realities on the ground, one of the first things for me in a lot of the work that I do, I see there is a lot of progress in terms of using science, natural science, data and information to feed into policy, which is great. But when it comes to sustainable development, which is really about striking these three things: environment, society, economy. And even within that, we need to add politics. Because one of the things that I've learned is that science cannot afford to be apolitical. Because in a lot of processes where science has to feed into policy, there are a lot of politics that are ingrained in that. So for me, the science-policy interface is really a people, science, policy, people interface. And within that, politics and power are key issues. But how do we know, basically, how not to make trade-offs that perpetuate the mistakes of the past? Is really by conducting livelihoods analysis that basically show us whether the policies and the science that we're using are actually creating transformative change on the ground. So one of the important considerations, for instance, is the issue of justice, which is procedural justice. And also recognizing that in the science policy interface, we do have knowledge hierarchies where Western science still very much dominates a lot of the thinking and a lot of the doing. So how do we draw on other ways of knowing about the ocean? And I'm not saying that Western science is not useful. It's very, very useful. We need it, but no discipline and no singular science is enough to help us navigate these complex challenges of ocean and coastal governance. We need more interdisciplinary approaches and transdisciplinary approaches to do this. And this is even why we have the notion of governance, because some of the foundational definitions of governance are that it is really a shift away from government to governance. And again, it's not saying we're doing away with government. We need governance. Government is part of everything that we do, but it's recognizing that states alone, governments alone, cannot help us achieve sustainable outcomes when it comes to ocean governance. This is why a lot of global processes are promoting a whole of governments and a whole of society approaches, because that's what we need. And I've interacted with some government officials as well, because what happens is when you see a lot of policy instruments, they always say the states must, or governments should do this, with the assumption that governments have all the answers, which they do not. So I've really, which is why I'm talking about co-production in my talk, I've really seen the power of partnerships where governments, civil society, communities, academia, and other actors coming together, because that's what we really need if we are talking about an SDG agenda of 2030. 5 minutes left? Okay. So I'm told I have 5 minutes, so I won't have time to speak about everything. So one of the important, I know this slide looks very academic, but that's not the intention. The reason why I put that here is over and above having partnerships and using transdisciplinarity, which is really about engaging more than just governments, more than just academia, more than just scientists. One of the things that we also need to pay attention to when we're talking about normative policy and normative science is how when we're doing ocean governance, one also has to draw on different disciplines and schools of thought. And I put this slide because it basically reflects my journey and how I've come to learn about ocean governance. Many people, when they see me, they ask me, are you a lawyer? Because I always talk about policy and how we need to connect the global and the local. Even within the same level, at national level, we need to get different people into dialogue and into conversation. One of the things that I've learned in my journey is that I've had to draw from different schools of thoughts. For instance, because when I started working on governance, I realized that I was very much engaging with issues of politics and power. And I'm not trained as a lawyer or a political theorist or anything like that. But I realized that at the center of governance sits politics and power. Yes, the science is there and everything else is there, but as scientists, we need to know how to engage with that. And usually disciplinary knowledge is not going to teach us that. So I saw myself having to go into different theories as an academic because I have that privilege of doing that. But through doing that and drawing on different sets of knowledge, political ecology to understand issues of power, I was able to realize that if we really are to truly understand governance from a holistic point of view, we need to really interrogate, even academically from the scientific point of view, different types of knowledge that can help us do that. I thought I had more time, but I was told that I don't have more time. What I wanted to end my presentation off with is, so what is the way forward? I mean, it will take me long to go to my slides at the end, so I'm just going to talk to it. So what is the way forward in terms of creating transformative governance? Because I don't want to come here and talk about issues, but I also want to talk about what's been working. And like I said, for me, quick fix solutions or parachute science or one-size-fits-all approaches to science and policy will not really address some of the key challenges that we're seeing in the Western Indian Ocean. Like I said earlier on, we need all of governments, all of society approaches. But for me, for us to achieve transformative change, we need to think innovatively about the approaches that we're using to engage with complex governance processes. So for instance, in my work, and some of my colleagues are here in the room, one of the things that we really have been drilling on is arts-based methods. And I mean, I know some of you hear the word arts and you think, what is that? Even me, when I was introduced to these approaches, I was a bit skeptical. But what I was noticing was, in trying to connect science and policy, policy briefs were not working. We were trying to bring people to speak to each other, but policy briefs would just be shelved in the shelves and nothing was really changing. So I started thinking about what can we do innovatively to really start processes that are transformative. So for those of you who are interested in hearing more, please find me and I'm happy to share that. So we've been using a lot of arts-based methods to try and create dialogue between people that wouldn't normally talk to each other, such as intergovernmental organizations, governments, communities, to bring them into one room, to start discussing pathways for transformation, because change is going to take time. I'm talking about doing transdisciplinary work and drawing on different sets of knowledge, integrating indigenous knowledge into science. All of that is not easy. It takes time. It's very qualitative. That's why many decision makers feel like it's a lot of work. It will take time for them to be able to pass policies, but it is work that is really needed. So what I would like to leave you with is that when we're talking about transforming all of the complexities, all of the things from the past that are really going to come into the way of us shaping a common vision that will leave no one behind, we really need to think innovatively. So in my work, I use arts-based methods to try and create dialogue between different actors. It's a process, and there's a lot that I could say to it. How do we do that with the different groups that I'm working with? There are a lot of really exciting methodologies. In the talks, in the conference, I've been hearing a lot of people talking about storytelling, talking about how they're already doing some of this work. So I would say that those are the kind of processes that we need to start thinking about innovatively, because change is going to take time, in my view, if we're trying to transform ocean governance. But there are a lot of people in the room that are already starting to do this work. And I will just end off here by saying, in connecting science to policy, just to remember that there is no one-size-fits-all quick fix solution to resolving issues of ocean governance. And also just to highlight that context is key. Yes, we have common visions, but contexts do differ from place to place, and there's a lot of nuance that we need to pay attention to. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it is true. We are not managing coral reefs, we are not managing mangroves, we are not managing fisheries, though we say we are managing those things. We are managing people who are using those resources. So it's about people, and yes, social sciences matters a lot. Thanks, Dr. Phil, for those insights. As we move on for today's work this morning, it's my distinct honor to introduce our next keynote speaker for this morning, a true luminary in the field of marine sciences, majoring in coral reefs. We are privileged to have with us Dr. David Obura, Chair Intergovernmental Platform of Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services for the term of 2023-2026, and has represented the Earth Commission from 2019 to 2026. He is also a founding director of CODIO, East Africa, an organization focusing on promoting the sustainability of coral reefs and marine systems in the Western Indian Ocean. His research primarily centers on coral reef resilience, biogeography, and the impacts of climate change. In recent years, Dr. Bura has expanded his focus to sustainability science, particularly examining nature-climate interactions and their implications for economic and social context. He investigates the scientific foundations that support just transition and transformation, aiming to foster collective action for sustainability at all levels and strengthen the broader sustainable development framework. In recognition of his contribution, Dr. Bura was awarded Kenya's National Honor, Moran of the Burning Spear, in December 2021, and received the Coral Reef Conservation Award from the International Coral Reef Society in 2022. This morning, Dr. Bura will share insights from his work, inspiring us with the stories of hope and progress in ocean conservation, with his presentation entitled, "The Meaning of Sustainability, Balancing Nature, Economy, and Society." A presentation that fits under the theme Marine Spatial Planning and Ocean Governance. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Bura, son of Kenya, son of Western Indian Ocean, father of coral reefs.
Okay, thank you very much, Antonio. Good morning, everyone. Pleasure to be here, to be invited by WIOMSA to do this keynote. As Antonio said, he was here for the first WIOMSA Symposium here in Mombasa in '97. I was trying to wonder which one that was. I guess I was here too. So that makes us part of the WAZE. And what I'll do is, what I'm trying to do with my talk is go through a bit of a narrative. I was encouraged to make it a bit of a personal journey type of a talk as well. From that point, I'll rush through, I guess almost 30 years ago to now, and really trying to work out how to bring our knowledge from the West Indian Ocean and the reality, the lived realities that we're in from Dr. Mbatha's talk as well, to the global stage, because of course we are impacted by the global stage, we're part of it, and we need our voices to come forward as well. I use this photo a lot now because looking around the room as well, there are many early career scientists here. We all have to work very hard for what we do. That hard work and dedication is critical. Planning is, of course, critical, and trying to get into the right places at the right times. But many opportunities just happen along in ways that you don't imagine. I was being quite engaged in feeding information to journalists when they want, to one in particular in the New York Times newspaper. And this sort of thing comes around sort of by serendipity, I suppose, because it gives us a huge platform to speak from and leverage from and use in getting our message out to the world. So what I will try and do, okay, let's see if I can go in the right directions, is to thread a bit of a narrative from coral reefs and climate change, thinking about plausible futures, my journey into IPBES. Am I speaking loud enough? Okay. So my journey into IPBES and being the chair of this intergovernmental platform, which is a great honor, of course, to be in this position, and responsibilities, but provides great opportunities as well. And then moving into the final stages, which I think are really important for us in terms of thinking about sustainability, where we are going from here, what the future trajectories should be. I do want to acknowledge from the beginning that this work, of course, over a career does involve many different people over time, many different processes. So my colleagues in Cordio, there are many around the room here, past and present. I've been on Earth Commission, that's a group that works on planetary boundaries. IPBES is a really central framing. I'll explain a bit more about that and why I wanted to come into IPBES because of its strengths. And then in the last few years in the discussions around the Global Biodiversity Framework, I was engaged with this Africa CSO Biodiversity Alliance, which is really about acknowledging the diversity of civil society groups, communities, but also scientists and practitioners across Africa in trying to get our voice into the Global Biodiversity Framework processes. So, start with the bad news, and then we can move on to, well, what do we do about this? Is sustainability possible in the context of climate change and coral reefs? Because things are very quickly moving in the wrong directions. This is a burning ember chart, which of course everybody is very familiar with from the IPCC processes. That's the IPBES for climate change, if people haven't heard of it. And this is showing that, from the AR6 report, or the 1.5 degree report that came out in 2018, they identified that from the coral reef science literature, that the band from 1.5 to 2 degrees of warming is a band over which coral reefs become critical in terms of thermal stress. A recent report, the Global Tipping Points report, actually reduced that band down to 1 to 1.5 degrees warming, which we are coming out of right now. This is a graphic from a few years ago that I picked up, showing global average temperatures and trends towards 1.5 degrees, crossing that threshold. It's important to know that for the IPCC, that 1.5 degree threshold is a 20-year average. So even though we passed 1.5 degrees of warming last year, the annual average temperature was 1.5 degrees above baselines. The average wouldn't be crossed until 2033, until a new paper came out last year and says we're actually going to get there around 2028. So we really coming to the top end of this temperature band right now, and it's really important, not in that this makes us lose hope, but in that we have to be really realistic about what we're looking into the future for and working towards, especially when it comes to the commitments that we all have to make, that communities have to make, our governments have to make in moving forward. This is a temperature graphic that I think really captures the gravity of the challenge. This is daily sea surface temperatures around the world, I think from the 1970s perhaps, and a lot of gray lines for past years. But you can see I've highlighted the last 3 years, 2023, 24, and 25. And you can see that in mid-2023, the temperatures really jacked up about 1/4 or 0.3 of a degree, and they haven't gone down since then. So, and these rectangles show the amount of warming that sea surface temperature has gone through over first a 30-year period, then about 10 years, and then about 1 year. So climate change is accelerating at this point. I think it's really important to be very clear about that. 2023 coincides with the beginning of the 4th global bleaching event. When it started, it hasn't stopped, so we're still in it right now. And of course, many of us are working on this as a challenge now. So what is possible for coral reefs? Cordio has really focused on coral reefs. It's what we started with in 1999 as a response to the 98 bleaching event, and we've been able to continue since then, working very much on both the big picture issues of climate vulnerability and what's happening with bleaching and reef recovery dynamics, but then also community dependence on coral reefs. I'll just show 2 quick synthesis plots here. My apologies to my Cordio folks for not showing a lot of the detail of our work. But I think what's useful to understand when you look at these plots is that these plots depend on the work that we have been doing over the last 30 years in our various communities, in mangroves, in the soft sediment communities as well, reporting all this data into global networks that then allow these global indicators to be derived, and these indicators drive policy. And it's critically important that we contribute to those processes. So we've been working on the red list of ecosystems for the last few years in the region. applied them to the whole region and finished that in 2021, 2022. And now there's a global project that's coordinated through IUCN, but my team is very much involved in leading the technical content of that process to other regions around the world. All of the ecoregions and regions that have been assessed, coral reef ecoregions that have been assessed on the red list of ecosystems, are either vulnerable to critically endangered. I'm not aware of one that is least concern or below that threshold for threat. And there will be some, of course, as we do this analysis around the world, but most will be at this level of threat. And then when you look at the red list of species for corals, I've been a co-chair of the IUCN Coral Specialist Group for a number of years. We've finished the assessment of the species in late last year and reported that 44% of corals species are threatened with extinction. That's in their global distributions. That's up from 30%, was estimated in 2008. Different methodologies, so you can't compare those two numbers perfectly. But the paper that we're preparing now, looking at the results, we're seeing that this 44% threatened was using data up to 2019, 2020, so it doesn't include the last 5 years through the current global bleaching event or that sudden increase in global temperatures. So if we did it now, would they be 50% of species threatened? And risk is accelerating compared to over the last 30 years. So we're actually speeding to this precipice, to this cliff. We're not slowing down in the global community. So I want to come back to that in a moment. Coming back down to the local level, our work is very much focused around small-scale fisheries, both the community side of it and community-based conservation, and trying to really promote a community agency in beach management units, locally managed marine areas in Kenya, in other countries of the region. Also really focusing on the fishery dynamics themselves, looking at some of the key fish species and the catch dynamics in the fisheries. So we can really understand and try and promote this sustainability of human dependence in the context of coral reefs. Again, I'm just putting this as a very broad sort of graphic over here because I'm coming back to this issue in the broader scale and relating what we do here to the world in which IPBES is operating on a global scale and more generally. Now, I think it's really important to be thinking about the future and planning forwards. There's a lot of work that's very complex work that goes into modeling, of course. These are biodiversity scenarios in a paper in 2020 that were developed that really helped inform the global biodiversity framework process. Very complex analyses that were simplified into that graphic in the middle about sort of low, medium, and best case scenarios. And then how this translates into global sort of communications and campaigns and fundraising and so on. And I think in ways that are often not very helpful. I think it's really important for us in the technical community. We really sit between many areas, and it's really important for us to be accountable to the people who are dependent on these systems and whose livelihoods this really affects. And that means we're very conscious about shifting baselines. How much has it changed since the past? But we must also be very conscious about plausible futures in terms of what we're projecting forward. If we're going to invest in this space, ask people to invest finance, their money, their work, and also their livelihoods in future solutions, what really is the plausible outcome that is possible from this, and how might people benefit from that? So then, I'll go into the next slide. This is a little bit, so I'm weaving a bit of a story through this of some of the key things I think touch on some of the issues that we're dealing with. So in the context of the Global Biodiversity Framework, so that's the CBD logo there and the icon for the Global Biodiversity Framework in the SDGs, looking at trends in nature and its contributions to people. Where may we get to? Now, these future scenarios that David Leclerc and colleagues put out basically identified, simplified down to business as usual one in the gray. The yellow one was if everything was done to deliver on the Aichi target. So this was published in 2020, so the analyses were done before that, and we are still in the previous Aichi target framework. So if all the conservation and restoration actions were achieved, that would be the future trajectory for biodiversity going out to 2100, so well below a 2010 baseline. Now we know that none of the HE targets were achieved, right? So we were not at that yellow line when we got to 2020. The green line is doing all of that conservation restoration work, plus making all of the economic activities that we do sustainable. So minimal impacts on nature, sustainable extraction, all of the economic actions that are necessary to reverse threats on biodiversity. And in that scenario, we get to a nature-positive future sometime around 2070 compared to 2010, and a little bit better than that, okay? Now, in 2025, you know, this, of course, this work was being done in 2020, 2021. 2025 was somewhere between the yellow and the gray lines, right? We didn't achieve the HE targets. How close are we to the projections and the marketing that we've been making about nature-positive futures? We're very far away from those, right? We haven't actually flattened the curve of biodiversity loss. It's still continuing pretty much as it was in 2020, as everybody ramps up and thinks about protected areas by 2030 and so on. There's another study that came out that is also very useful, which is a good study because it shows that if no conservation actions were done, things would be a lot worse than business as usual. Business as usual includes the good things that are being done as well. And this study by Langhammer et al. Showed that about half of conservation actions do achieve positive impact, so raise the bar and improve the state of biodiversity. 20% reduce the decline, about a third are negative in their impact. So we're somewhere around, you know, that's red to gray to yellow curves, depending on where you are and the projects that you're doing. Actions on nature are critical, but they're not enough. It's at this point that I came into the IPBES process, and I think IPBES, and the reason I sort of came into it is because I think the science framework is actually the right one, that we need to really address the challenges in the future. It's an intergovernmental platform. It started in 2012. We now have 151 state members. I just heard that Cyprus joined yesterday, so that's fantastic. We're best known for the assessments that we produce, which are all up here, and there's some coming up in the future. The last one we'll produce that we have in our list right now is a second global assessment, and one of the co-chairs is actually a professor from Nairobi University, Professor Nicholas Oguge. Some of you may know him, so of course I'm very proud of that we have a Kenyan co-leading that assessment. I love doing this in various forums actually, because IPBES really is based on the knowledge communities that we are all in. So I'm going to ask anybody that is in or has had some association with IPBES, an assessment, a task force, or other role, please stand up, because I know there are some of you, or should be in the room, some may not be in the room. Come on, any IPBES associated people? I have a couple here, great, thank you. Yes, we're standing up. And this is the thing, when I'm, as the chair of a platform like this, we have such a wide community that is involved that I'm continually, conferences all over the place, have a wide range of people standing up who have produced these assessments. I come in and I sort of represent the work that we've done, but it's certainly not my work that we're talking about here. Now, what do? We have developed this conceptual framework as a framework to synthesize the knowledge that is out there on nature and how it supports people. So we're not just a biodiversity panel. We're really about nature, biodiversity, and ecosystem services, and I'm trying to find ways as chair to really communicate that more effectively so people understand what we do. So the global assessment in 2019 was our main assessment report that really sort of put our name out there with some very good results. This conceptual framework really tracks how nature provides contributions to people, we call them, broader than ecosystem services, supporting a good quality of life, the various institutions and values and so on in the middle there, and anthropogenic assets, which the previous speaker alluded to, that are really important in the diversity of different value systems and worldviews that are involved around the world, and then the direct drivers of decline on nature. Now, on the back of this framework, we organize all our work. I'll just highlight 2 assessments now, which we approved in December 2024. First, the Nexus assessment, and this was produced I was a co-chair of this assessment, so I applied to join the team. And when I saw the scoping report, we put out scoping reports of what our assessments are supposed to do so that people see that and apply to join the author groups. I realized this is exactly what I want to be publishing on when I grow up, right? So at a later stage in my career. So I'm tired of describing how corals are getting worse and worse and impacted by climate change, and the world is not doing the right things about that. And I want to be publishing and writing about sustainability dynamics and how we really address the challenges. So looking at the interactions between biodiversity and climate change and 3 production sectors, so food, health, and water. And so what the author team did was they identified 70 response options, we call them. So these are solutions that we can implement on the ground with co-benefits across the 5 areas. So looking at actions that you can take. Are you having negative impacts on other sectors, or are you having positive synergies with them? And then how do you actually scale these actions? What kind of governance do you need? And to me also, it's not so much about these 5 as critical sectors, but that this is like this is a model that's generalizable to other sectors as well. So just to highlight some of these response options, we could call them management actions or livelihood actions. I'm just highlighting here, they identified 71 that are well documented, top ones that were selected because they could be well described, not that there's only 70, there's hundreds and hundreds. But out of those 71, 38 were actually directly relevant to the ocean space, which was good to see. And I've just highlighted some of them over here. We grouped them into 10 major classes. You can see from the codes in the second column, so the top one, area-based conservation, that came from biodiversity. That was their number 1 response option. And you can see across the 5 sort of icons to the right, the degree of co-benefits, so the degree of benefits in blue, large circle or small circle, and then there are a few that have trade-offs, small red circles down there. But you can see that there are, from whichever sector you may be focused in, there are many actions that one can take to have co-benefits across other sectors. And that's really important because then you can have allies in all of those sectors in terms of delivery of solutions rather than fighting each other because your activities impact on one another. It's interesting to note that offshore wind power, of course, that's an incredibly important solution for climate change. But when you look at that compared to other types of solutions and the potential trade-offs and synergies, it's actually one of the actions that came off with rather a small amount of co-benefits across other sectors. The transformative change assessment, this one came out at the same time, and it took a different approach, looking at the underlying causes that lock in current political economies. And this was really very closely related to what Dr. Mbatha mentioned just now. The disconnection from and domination over nature and people. The authors tried to call this colonial modernity, but that language wasn't really very popular in the review process, so they had to sort of pull back from using labels like that to really just describing the phenomenon as it is, concentration of power and wealth, and prioritization of short-term individual and material gains. They identified a number of strategies that could be used to overcome the syndromes or the indirect drivers that sort of express these underlying causes and push them through. I'm going to jump forward a little bit. And what was really useful, and I really encourage all of you to look at this assessment because it's applicable across all the sectors that we work in, is that they identified that transformative change isn't just one big thing. It's about really many different building blocks, and it's about shifting views, structures, and practices that keep these underlying causes locked in. So how do you change these processes? And of course, that's what many programs are doing in terms of building capacities, linking communities, finding solutions out there. Now, I've found that one of the things I want to do is to really see that the problem we have is the economic system, and our scientific frameworks make it very difficult to talk directly about that. It's one of the worldviews that exists on the planet. There are many others from indigenous and other communities, of course. But the one that we really need to shift is this economic system that really extracts from nature, provides benefits to society, and these indirect and direct drivers. And I'm trying to see if I can use this framing to really take the narrative a little bit deeper. If you look at the nature's contributions to people on the left there from the global assessment, they identified that 3 of those are increasing. Those are the ones we actually maximize in our economic system: food, materials from nature, and energy. And it's the economic system that imposes all these direct drivers that undermine nature and all of the other contributions from nature as well. When we look at climate change, regulation of climate, regulation of ocean acidification are other contributions from nature in this schematic. And if we just try and maximize those, such as through carbon sequestration and monoculture, forest plantations and trees in the wrong places, we basically just we just amplify the impact on natural systems and direct drivers. So we have to shift how we are promulgating our solutions rather than just doing it from the same framework as we did before. And this is the framing that these two assessments pulled out. I'm going to shift forward a little bit more quickly over here because I'm being pushed off the stage, I think, quite soon. And so the useful thing about the Nexus and Transformative Change assessments, if you go to our website, you can find them most easy by Googling them, really. Nexus assessment, in a way, looks bottom-up through this nature, economy, society model, whereas the Transformative Change assessment looks more from the top down in terms of the values that need to shift in order to enable solutions in how our economic systems use nature. Now, I'm going to have to jump through a few slides here. One of the things I want to emphasize here, it's the economy stupid. This came up in American elections some time back. I thought it sounded very Republican, but I looked it up last night, and it was actually Bill Clinton that used this in his campaign, so a Democrat. But I think, we've spent so much effort focusing on nature and conserving nature in our biodiversity science, and what we need to be doing is addressing the drivers. If we don't shift our economic system, that has basically taken 94% of mammalian biomass and packaged that into a single species pathway, the food we eat in us. It's just insane that only 2% of mammalian biomass on the planet is terrestrial biomass that we know from all those photos and videos and so on. 4% is marine mammals. And if you look at the total biosphere, we have constructed as much anthropomass or stuff as the total biomass of living nature on the planet. If that's not a sign of something that's going to break, I don't know what is. And we have to really understand that we can't just change a planetary system ad lib like this and think that it can sustain into the future. So I think what I'll do then is forget that one. I'll jump through a few more. Redistribution is necessary and possible. Now this slide really, from the Earth Commission work, really shows that there's many people, and it's actually in the end about 50% of the global population, underconsume. They live below what we call the just minimum access. If you look at the impact of raising the welfare of all those people to what we would say is just, it's basically equivalent to the footprint of the top 1 to 4% of the population on the planet. So it's perfectly possible to take maybe from the upper 10% and redistribute some of that. I've put wealth over here, but you could call it consumption. You could call it materials. There are plenty of people who have way too much in that top 1 to 4% or top 10%. And just shifting that across to the bottom 50% could achieve, welfare for them. And of course, we have to reduce as well to come back within planetary limits. The last thing I would like to mention is that, so through the Global Biodiversity Framework process, what I was really interested in taking from the Earth Commission was looking at nature where people live. So rather than focusing on protected areas, the last remaining best biodiversity areas, there's tons of people looking at that. But that's often where there's few people. Of course, they're communities and indigenous groups, and they need to have rights and control in those places. But where many people live and depend on nature, they're not that great for biodiversity, so we just ignore all of that. We just take our money somewhere else and put it in the best places. And if we do that, we just condemn those places to continued decline. We really need to understand how much nature locally is enough to support people and what kind of nature is that. And we came up with, on land per square kilometer, 20 to 25% in semi-natural vegetation per square kilometer is sufficient for these ecosystem services in the graph here. So 5 of those, nature's contributions. So that gives a rule of thumb. If you can maintain or restore 25% per square kilometer under natural systems, you can actually provide for the livelihoods and the welfare and the health of people in these spaces. And I think it's really important for us to come out of our focus. So this is a paper that I did with African authors during the Global Biodiversity Framework discussions. Rather than putting all the money into the best places, let's put it across 100% of landscapes in a spatial planning framework and stop focusing just on target 3 and the 30% of the best or the most important places for biodiversity, but look across all of the targets in the Global Biodiversity Framework, because by meeting them together is how you achieve the overall framework, not by focusing on just one. And I think the focus on 30 by 30 and target 3 can be very damaging for balanced attention to all the sustainable use and the equity and rights issues that need to be addressed across other spaces. So I think I'll stop there then. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. David Obura. And to our prior speaker, we gave you equal time, 25 minutes each. So please forgive me for kind of moving you along. Maybe next year we need to do 30 or 35 for keynotes, because the content is very interesting, is what I'm trying to say. Maybe we're not allocating enough time. So we're taking notes, we're learning, and we will review. Thank you very much also to our session chair, Professor Antonio. Thank you for leading that. A round of applause, and Dr. Filile. All right. We're coming up to the end of our plenary now. I just want to give some really important announcements before we move into morning coffee and then our breakout sessions. So we'll take 30 minutes for coffee. Remember, our session chairs are going directly to the room to make sure everything is set for us in the breakout rooms. Posters. I mentioned that we had a challenge. So we have got our poster exhibition space just outside the back door and across. We've got some beautiful content there. Now, we want to announce at the final cocktail tomorrow evening the People's Choice Award for the most interesting poster. So every person, every delegate has one vote with a sticker. So I'd like you, between now and tomorrow lunchtime, you choose when you'd like to go have a look at the posters, to get a sticker from one of the ushers. It's a small white sticker. Go through the exhibition space. There's no criteria. It's just which poster speaks to you, and put a sticker next to that poster. It's a bit of fun. There is no prize. There's no money. There's no trophy. But whoever has the most artistic or the People's Choice Award for the favorite poster will be recognized at the official cocktail tomorrow night. Does that sound good? All right. One delegate, one sticker. Ushers are ready even from now. So if you want to go straight to the exhibition space, you're welcome to do so. All right. Final announcement. Let's download the app. We have a couple of hundred people more that need to download the app. Please get on there. It's a sign of appreciation to the technical team that have put it together. Tomorrow morning, we kick off at 8:30 a.m. in this room, ready to go. If you don't want to see us doing the dry run and the rehearsal, walk into the room at 8:29, because there's a lot that goes on just before. But if you enjoy the behind the curtain, behind the scenes, we'll be in this room from 8. So otherwise, it's a free evening unless you've been invited to a side event. Have a wonderful day ahead. Lots to do. Conserve your energy. And we will see you tomorrow morning. And one quick note to our authors of all the book launches and the keynote speakers: we will do a photo on the stage as everyone leaves for coffee. So any high-level dignitaries will go for tea in the holding room with Dr. Chuda. Authors, keynotes, please stick around on the stage. And I had a special request from Team Tanzania, who also want to do a photo. Don't know why they asked me to announce that. I don't know. I'm Kenyan, right? Have a wonderful day ahead. DJ. AV team, music, please. Yes. Photographer, please. Design Emporium, please come to the front of the stage. Karibu, karibu. Please, can we remove the podium from the stage? Design Emporium, can we have the photographer, please? Keynote speakers, welcome to the stage, and authors. board members, Madam President, can you join the keynote speakers and the board members, authors? AV team, some music, please. Come on into the center. Official photo. Photographer, please. Photographer from Design Emporium. Please come to the front of the room. Thank you.